The crystal chandelier above our table cast little rainbows across my wine glass as Dorian reached into his briefcase and pulled out a cream-colored envelope. My name was written across it in his assistant's handwriting, and something about the way he slid it toward me made my entire world tilt sideways. "Thanks for 8 incredible years, Nyla," he said, wearing that same warm smile he'd worn when he invited me to this ridiculously expensive restaurant an hour earlier. "Unfortunately, we're restructuring your division. This is effective immediately." I stared at the envelope like it might bite me. 8 years. 8 years of 60-hour weeks, of missing my nephew's first steps because I was in client meetings, of building relationships that turned our failing department into the company's biggest moneymaker. And now, he was ending it, between courses at a place that charged $40 for a piece of fish. My name is Nyla. I'm 31 years old, and I thought I knew what betrayal felt like. Until that moment. I opened the envelope with steady hands, even though everything inside me was screaming. Termination papers. Legal jargon about immediate cessation of duties. A severance package that was decent, but nowhere near enough for what I'd given them. "I hope you understand, this isn't personal," Dorian continued, cutting into his steak like nothing had changed. "It's just business. The board wants to streamline operations. Just business." The phrase echoed in my head as I folded the papers and tucked them back into the envelope. I looked at this man, who I'd worked beside for 8 years, who I'd helped make millions of dollars, who I'd trusted with my career and my future. "Of course," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Can you tell me more about the severance timeline?" He looked relieved I wasn't crying or making a scene. "Smart girl," he said. And those 2 words hit harder than the termination itself. Smart girl. Like I was some intern he was patting on the head instead of the woman who had saved his reputation more times than I could count. What Dorian didn't know was that I'd been watching him for months. Not because I suspected anything like this, but because something had felt off. Our department's numbers, resources that kept disappearing, projects delayed without explanation. And Dorian? Increasingly secretive, holding mysterious meetings with the executive team. I'd also heard whispers about an acquisition. Our company was eyeing a smaller competitor, Zenith Technologies. They were struggling publicly but held valuable AI patents, worth hundreds of millions. About 2 weeks before this lunch, the pieces started clicking together. One night I'd stayed late and spotted Dorian on a call through the glass wall of his office. Spreadsheets on his screen. His body language told me this wasn't a normal business call. The next morning, I dug into our financials, legitimately. What I found chilled me. Dorian had been systematically redirecting resources from my division, making our performance look worse, while building a narrative to the board that Zenith was a failing company ripe for cheap acquisition. But I knew Zenith's technology. I'd worked with some of their engineers. Their AI patents were revolutionary, not outdated. My firing wasn't about restructuring. It was about removing the one person who could expose his scheme. I didn't sleep that night. I started building a methodical inventory, emails, reports, client conversations, and I reached out to one of the smartest people I knew, my old professor, Dr. Elena Vasquez, now a respected industry analyst. We met for coffee. I shared what I could, carefully. She was intrigued. 3 days later, Elena published a report highlighting Zenith's undervalued patents. The market noticed. Zenith's stock shot up 38% in one day, disrupting Dorian's acquisition timeline. But I wasn't finished. I remembered seeing suspicious numbers in Dorian's planner during our lunch. Over the next few days, I cross-referenced them with my saved reports. The pattern was clear. Dorian had manipulated our performance and financial narrative. I prepared a memo outlining my findings and sent it to 3 board members I had worked with on past projects. By the following week, External auditors were brought in. 2 weeks later, the acquisition of Zenith was called off. Dorian was placed on extended leave. And soon after, he resigned. His plan had collapsed. Meanwhile, I was still unemployed, but not for long. I got a call from Marcus Webb, CTO of Zenith Technologies. Over lunch, he offered me my dream job, Director of Strategic Partnerships. I accepted. 6 weeks after my firing, I walked into Zenith, not as a discarded employee, but as a leader. 2 months later, I led the acquisition of the same AI patents Dorian had coveted, for 60% less than he had planned to pay. Sometimes, revenge isn't about destruction. It's about building something better while your adversaries fade away. I never contacted Dorian. I didn't need to. In a small industry, news travels. I heard he'd taken a mid-level role at a consulting firm. Meanwhile, Zenith's revenues soared. My equity stake grew larger than anything I'd earned in 8 years at my old company. Then one Thursday, an unexpected visitor arrived, Jessica Chun, former legal counsel from my old company. She brought documents showing Dorian's scheme went even deeper. Stock manipulation, potential securities fraud. She had quit after realizing the scope of the conspiracy. Elena published an investigative report detailing the scheme, without naming names, and the industry buzzed. The so-called acquisition mastermind had been exposed as a fraud. Months later, I was promoted again, Vice President of Strategic Innovation. At a major conference, I spotted Dorian in the audience during my keynote on ethical innovation. He approached afterward, offering a stiff congratulations. I replied with polite indifference, and then poetic justice. Zenith acquired the technology division of my former company. The division Dorian had tried to hollow out was now part of the company he'd failed to bring down. Today, I lead global strategy for a company valued at over $8 billion. The patents we acquired have become the foundation of products used by millions. I think back to that lunch sometimes. Dorian thought he was ending my story, but he only edited out the dull chapters so the real story could begin. And if you take anything from my experience, let it be this. When someone tries to diminish you, your greatest revenge isn't destruction. It's success, building something so extraordinary that they become irrelevant.